Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Welcome to the Polish Consulate General in Chicago at the commemoration of the 100th birthday of the late Jan Karski. We are glad to see so many of you here tonight, representatives of the Polish-American and Jewish-American communities, members of the Chicago Consular Corps and international community, and representatives of the local administration. In particular, I want to welcome Governor Pat Quinn, who's just joining us. Also, please join me in welcoming Holocaust survivors, Mr. Adam Paluch and Ida Kirsch, as well as Mr. Jan Karskiego. Also, please welcome Mr. Stanisław Stawski, son of Mr. and Mrs. Kazimierz Stawski, recognized by Yad Vashem as righteous among the nations. Also, please welcome our dear veterans, members of the Polish resistance, the Home Army, and participants in the Warsaw Uprising 1944, as well as Siberian exiles. The reason why so many of us are here tonight is to honor the memory of one man, Jan Karski, a Polish diplomat and officer in the Polish secret state, who was the first one to provide eyewitness accounts of the Holocaust to the free world. Here to offer opening remarks on behalf of the consulate is Deputy Consul General Robert Rusiecki.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, on behalf of the Consul General Paulina Kapuścińska, myself and the entire staff of the Consulate, thank you very much for coming. We are happy and privileged to have so many guests tonight. Let me briefly say a few words about the life of Jan Karski. He was born on April 24th, 1914 in Łódź, Poland. There are various birth dates, including March 22nd, 1912, April 22nd, 1914, and June 24th, 1914. Karski was born with the last name Kozielewski, and by 1935 he completed his military training. By 1938 he completed his diplomatic training, and he started a diplomatic career. During the September campaign of the 1939, which was the beginning of the Second World War, he served in the 5th Regiment of Mounted Artillery. In the last battle of this regiment, he was kept by the Russians, who invaded Poland from the east on September 17th. Later he was handed over to Germans, and probably this was the reason why, excuse me, this must be really something important. He escaped the Katyn massacre. In November 1939 he escaped from the Germans and he came to Warsaw, where he joined Związek Walki Zbrojnej, the Union of Armed Struggle, which was the first resistance movement in occupied Europe at that time. Later it became Armia Krajowa, the Home Army. At that time he changed his last name into Karski, and later on it became his official last name. Also, he began his courier missions for the Polish government in exile. He traveled across Europe to France, to Belgium, and on one of those missions he was kept by the Germans, heavily tortured, finally managed to escape, came back and started working for started his service for the Home Army again. He had a special mission for the Prime Minister Sikorski, for the government in exile. And the special mission was report on what was happening in Poland. So his mission was to inform about Nazi atrocities. In order to gain evidence, Karski had twice been smuggled by Jewish underground into the Warsaw Ghetto to directly witness what was happening to the Jews. From 1942, Karski reported to the Polish, British and US government on the situation in Poland, especially on the destruction of the Warsaw Ghetto and the Holocaust. He met with Polish politicians in exile and members of various political parties. He spoke with the British Foreign Secretary, Anthony Eden. He used evidence, microfilm, documents to support what he was witnessing. One of the documents was later used by Foreign Minister Edward Raczyński, and it was entitled "The Mass Extermination of Jews in Occupied Poland." And this was presented to all the governments of the United Nations on December the 10th, 1942. Finally, Karski traveled to the United States. And on July 28th, 1943, he personally met with President Franklin Roosevelt. The meeting was in the White House, and during the meeting, Karski told the president about the Holocaust. He was the first eyewitness met by President Roosevelt. He met with other politicians, government members, civic leaders in the United States, including Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter. Most of us may remember the Frankfurter's reaction. He was quite skeptical about what he had heard about the Holocaust. And to quote his words, Frankfurter said, "I did not say that he was lying. I said that I could not believe him. This is a difference," end of quote. Karski presented his reports to the media, to religious leaders, bishops, rabbis, Hollywood artists, film industry, but without much result. In 1944, he published his book, Courier from Poland, The Story of a Secret State. And this was a major success because it sold in 400,000 copies, along in the States before the end of the Second World War. Then, after the war, Karski came to the States and began his studies at the Georgetown University, received PhD in 1952, and in 1954 he became a citizen of the United States. And he stayed with the university where he taught East European studies. I think about 40 years. Is that right, Mr. Governor? Following the end of communism in Poland in 1989, Karski's wartime role was officially acknowledged by the authorities, and he received the Order of the White Eagle, which is the highest Polish civil decoration, and the Order of Virtuti Militari, which is the highest military decoration of Poland. In 2012, President Barack Obama awarded a posthumous Presidential Medal of Freedom to Jan Karski. Karski died in Washington, D.C. in the year 2000. On March the 18th, 2013, his book was republished as My Report to the World, The Story of a Secret State, was republished by Georgetown University Press. Jan Karski was a brave man. At the same time, he was a very modest man. He used to say about his mission, the failed mission. Why failed? Because millions of people perished during the Holocaust. 70 years later, what does it mean to us? We know, we remember, we will never forget. This is his legacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Consul Rusiecki. Back in 1942, when Jan Karski met with leaders of the free world, it was through his words that the Holocaust victims cried for help. It was also through his words that occupied Poland alarmed the world about the fate of Polish Jews, citizens of the Republic of Poland, who were being killed in German Nazi concentration camps in occupied Poland. Today's conference is co-organized by the Consulate and by the American Jewish Committee Chicago. Many thanks to Regional Director Amy Stoken for your assistance. Also, this conference is co-organized in partnership with the Jan Karski Educational Foundation, and we have with us tonight John McLeese, who is the foundation's legal counsel. Thank you for your assistance as well. And many thanks to Stephen Dishler and Rabbi Yehiel Putko from the Jewish United Fund and Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Chicago. Several weeks ago, we were thrilled to learn that Governor Pat Quinn decided to sponsor a proclamation whereby April 24th, 2014 was declared the Day of Jan Karski in the state of Illinois. Mr. Governor, thank you for that kind gesture. We hope that this proclamation helps to have Jan Karski's legacy be relevant for all Illinoisans and for Americans from across the country. Mr. Governor, please take the floor.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming to a very, very special occasion. I'm particularly grateful to the American Jewish Committee and to the Jewish United Fund, Jewish Federation, and also to the Jan Karski Educational Foundation. I think it's very, very important that we remember a great man on his 100th anniversary of his birth. And I would say that Jan Karski, who I personally knew, he was my teacher at Georgetown University. I had 2 different courses that were taught by Professor Karski, as was President William Jefferson Clinton, who was in the School of Foreign Service as I was. President Clinton was a little bit older than me, but he also had Professor Karski as his teacher. And I think it's very, very important that we remember the lessons that were taught by Jan Karski when I was attending Georgetown in the early 1970s. And those are eternal lessons. He was a man of great courage, but he was also a very modest man. And I will say this, he had a wonderful sense of connecting to people. He was a people person. We should not forget that. He's our hero, but he isn't in a statue far away. He was a man with a common touch. He loved to play chess. He loved to, frankly, tell jokes with the students, and he never took himself too seriously. To be honest, during his time at Georgetown, when I was there, he did not like to speak that much to the class about his experiences. As was mentioned, he was tortured by the Nazis in a very terrible way. He was in Nowy Sącz, Poland, in a hospital there, and probably scheduled to be executed, but somehow escaped the Gestapo, and then was able to make his way to England, as we heard, to tell those in Europe, who were in free Europe, what was going on in the death camps, telling the truth for the world to hear. And this book that he wrote about his experiences, the story of a secret state, has been republished, as you just heard. It is a page-turner, to say the least. It is a personal account of a man of great courage who at times was able to get the, I believe it was the uniform of a Estonian army officer that he was able to get and put on. So he literally penetrated the death camps to see firsthand the atrocities that were being committed against Jewish people. And it was so important that he tell that truth, not only in Europe and London, but then he came to America, and I saw a videotape of Professor Karski and talking about the day he went to see President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the White House. And as you may know, Karski was a smoker. He smoked all his life, a cigarette smoker, but so was President Roosevelt. And Karski imitated the way FDR would take a puff on a cigarette. And with all of his might, Professor Karski, Jan Karski, told President Roosevelt what was happening and begged him on behalf of the Allies to do something about these atrocities in these death camps. President Roosevelt, according to Karski, said, "We have to win the war. The Allies have to win the war." And I think it was, unfortunately, a mistake that was not enough. We had to win the war, but before that, to allow those camps to continue, after knowing the truth that was echoed and uttered by a man who was such a smart man. If you knew Jan Karski, he had a photographic memory, and he understood languages. He was somebody who could speak a language almost by hearing it. He was certainly given great gifts by God, and he used those gifts to try and save lives. And as you can see at the steps here as we were walking into the consulate today, there's a picture of Jan Karski, and I believe he was in Iowa in 1986. That's 72 years after he was born. And he pointed out to us that the suffering of the Jewish people, the Holocaust, is incomparable in human history. And it was important to tell that truth to political leaders and military leaders to do something about that. And there's a reason, when I was in Jerusalem, I went to Yad Vashem, I went to Jan Karski's tree. He's one of the righteous. The tree was planted in his memory because he understood that our duty as human beings on this earth was to always do the right thing and to tell the truth. And when we see evil and wrong, to do something about that. He understood that that is our highest calling as human beings. And I think on this centennial of his birth, that we should renew our commitment to doing right, to making sure that if we see wrong, we stand up to injustice, to evil. And Professor Karski did exactly that throughout his whole life. I think it also is meaningful that he was a Polish patriot. From the beginning of his days in Łódź, I think that's the right way to pronounce it, in a town in Poland, a city. He, I believe, was the youngest person in his family, of a very large family. And he understood that volunteering and doing important things was part of being a great patriot. He believed in the Polish understanding of freedom and liberty. The Polish people had always fought against tyranny and injustice, and that's why he joined the Foreign Service, I believe at about the age of 24. And later, when he became a professor in America, years later, after getting a PhD at Georgetown, the School of Foreign Service, he taught at that school for 40 years, the school that I went to. And the School of Foreign Service understood how important it was to have men and women committed to making sure that our world was a world that believed in democracy and freedom and liberty, fundamental values that we all believe in. And we should always remember that after our American Constitution was adopted, the second written Constitution on planet Earth was adopted by the Polish people. And I think Professor Karski always took great, he felt very strongly about that the connection where he was born in Poland and became an American citizen later, he always understood it was important to stand up to the totalitarian regimes, not only the Nazis, but then later the Soviets, who had an iron grip on the Polish people. Professor Karski was always a person who believed in resisting tyranny and never ever would succumb and give in. And I think those values are very, very important values to us today. And I think a way to remember Jan Karski is to take a look at the declaration when the president of our country, President Barack Obama, in 2012, gave him posthumously the Medal of Freedom, the American Medal of Freedom, because that, I think really, if Professor Karski was here today, he would be so honored to have received that medal and all these other awards. But as I said earlier, he was a very modest man. He was a very humble man, and he thought that it was important to always be humble, proud of your people, proud of your heritage, proud of your beliefs, proud of your religion. He was a very, very devoted and faithful man to his faith, and all of those things he was proud of. But he himself never exalted himself, even despite all of the heroic things he did to help our world. And as was mentioned, he always felt a sense of regret that having told these world leaders in the course of the war that something should be done and done now with respect to the death camps, the concentration camps, that he himself had personally witnessed the atrocities going on by taking his life in his own hands, penetrating the camps, wearing a uniform of the enemy to see firsthand the wrong that was being committed over and over again. Professor Karski felt that it was important that that history not be forgotten. He taught at Georgetown a number of courses, but he was a man of history. He understood that we should never forget things that went on before, so mistakes would not be repeated in the future. So I did want to come here today on behalf of the people of Illinois. I did declare today Jan Karski Day, and long may he live in our memory. And I would encourage everyone to get this book that just has been republished. And I know myself, when I go to bed at night, I try to read a few pages because it is worth always bringing this to heart. 400,000 copies were printed during World War II, during the middle of that terrible war where he had to defeat the totalitarian regimes that were threatening democracy and freedom on this planet. Professor Karski is always our hero, and I would say this: we ask today that God bless his immortal soul. Jan Karski, we love you, and we always will. Thank you.
We are attending the conference on Jan Karski or Jan Karski legacy in the Polish Consulate in Chicago. We know that you have been involved with the Karski Educational Foundation.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your objectives that you have for your foundation?
Well, I think the objectives are the same that were so wonderfully exhibited tonight in perpetuating the memory of Jan Karski as an example for all of us in our dealings with others and in our lives, and in reminding people of the book, The Story of a Secret State, and using that as a vehicle for education, for memory, and for inspiration, particularly young people. So that's the objective of the foundation and the sister foundation in Poland.
What is the reason that you have become involved with the foundation?
Well, thank you. I think for myself and my firm, Baker & McKenzie, we are eager to seek out occasions to assist worthy causes, especially ones that have this kind of a global impact. And so we've been very happy to do our part on just the legal things, helping to form the foundations, helping with contractual issues and general advice. It's been
so wonderful. Good luck with the foundation.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.